Hi, I'm Katharina Pfeffer from SBA Research, and today I'm going to present our work on the usability of authenticity checks for hardware security tokens. This is joint work with colleagues from the University of California, Irvine, the Tokyo Institute of Technology, and the CISPA Helmholtz Center for Information Security. Imagine you order a technical device on the internet. If you receive the packet, how do you actually know that it is indeed authentic and has not been tampered with or replaced on the way from the manufacturer to your home? Now, imagine you ordered not just any technical device, but a hardware device whose sole purpose is to keep valuable secrets safe, probably because you don't trust your software client. In this paper, we looked at two widely used hardware security tokens, hardware wallets used for securing large amounts of cryptocurrency, and YubiKeys used for secure authentication. Now, would you trust the authenticity of such a device because it had a holographic sticker on it? Or would you assume that the manufacturer implemented sufficient security? But how can you actually judge? In recent years, many attacks on hardware security tokens have been reported, making blind trust in their security questionable. Basically, the attacker can intercept or exchange the token and carry out different attacks, like, for instance, a ransom attack where the token stops operating after some time and then asking the user for ransom to resume operation. Alternatively, the attacker could fix a key, either by preloading a key in the case of hardware wallets or by making the random number generator predictable. Alternatively, the attacker can exfiltrate the key either during delivery by extracting pre-configured secrets, for instance, through bus snooping or IC microprobing, or during the runtime through covered channels outside of the protocol, like, for instance, a GSM module or Bluetooth. Also, the attacker can leak secrets in-band through the signature or other parts of the transaction, or use the USB interface to infect the computer with malware, trigger buffer overflows, or emulate the keyboard. To prevent such attacks, there are some authenticity checks in place. However, it looks like an arms race between manufacturers implementing new checks and attackers coming up with new attacks. Also, there's a third group which is often forgotten when talking about authenticity checks, which are the end users, who are actually responsible for trusting these complex and sometimes unusable methods. So in this paper, we include also end users and have a broad notion of authenticity checks that includes conventional attestation methods, as well as haptic and visual inspection of the packaging, the casing, and the electronics. To explore and solve this quite complex challenge, multiple research questions arose for us. First, how effective are currently deployed authenticity checks in defending against possible attacks, which is more the technical side? And second, how do users perceive and use the provided authenticity checks? Finally, which combination of authenticity checks can maximize security and usability? To answer these questions, we did two studies. First, a market review, where we did cognitive walkthroughs of 4 models of the U2F YubiKey, which is the currently most popular U2F token, and the 5 most recent hardware wallets. We stepped through the initialization process of these tokens and evaluated which authenticity checks are implemented and how they are reflected in the user interfaces. Additionally, we consulted then the manufacturer's documentation and published material to get a complete list of implemented checks, which then led to our evaluation framework. Second, we also did a user study where we started with some qualitative discussion rounds to explore the problem space, and based on our results, we constructed a quantitative online survey where we asked 3 user groups: hardware wallet users, YubiKey users, and smartphone users, which we included as a control group to see whether there are differences between people who buy devices only for security purposes, like hardware security tokens, or smartphone users. In our market review, we found here on the left side our evaluation framework, and on the right side a mapping of currently used authenticity checks to the devices which we examined in our market review. Basically, our results showed that no single authenticity check, but also no combination of currently implemented checks can sufficiently prevent all attacks. Like if, for instance, you can see some software attacks cannot sufficiently be prevented. Also, we found that manufacturers take contradicting measures. In some cases, for example, some use single bit casts, which cannot be opened at all, and others use openable devices so that users can check the inside of the hardware security token. Moreover, we found that some authenticity checks, which are not very effective or not effective at all, are implemented, unfortunately, by many devices on the market, while other checks, which we found to be very effective, are not implemented by all devices, which is here in the case of secure elements and CPUs, problematic because they are not only effective on their own, but they also increase the effectiveness of other methods like remote, local, or key attestation. Similarly, remote attestation is not used by many devices. Also, we found it to be more effective than local attestation. Moreover, we found in our user study that authenticity checks are only carried out by a fraction of users, and users all very often trust measures of the packaging, which we found to be not effective to judge token authenticity. Finally, we contrasted our results from user study and market review, and here you can see the perceived versus the actual effectiveness. In a nutshell, we found many users perceive the effectiveness incorrectly. Here, for example, you can see that for secure elements and CPUs, users at the same time over and underestimate the effectiveness. Also for single bit casts and key attestation, users underestimate the effectiveness, while for tamper evident packaging, they slightly overestimate the effectiveness. We found that the reason for these gaps between the perceived and actual efficiency are a lack of information and transparency of authenticity checks. Users do often not know which automatic checks are implemented, and manual checks are frequently hidden on the websites. So users cannot make informed trust decisions. Also, manufacturers often engage in security theater, which means that they use measures which are not or only marginally effective, but create a false sense of security, like for instance, holographic stickers. As a solution, we suggest on the one hand that manufacturers should implement the measures which we found to be very effective in the market review, which are secure CPUs and elements and remote firmware attestation. And on the other hand, those methods should also be user-centered. So we suggest transparent authenticity checks using spinners, warning, or check marks, as well as security labels, which could be similar to EU energy labels with grades from most to least secure. And that would be beneficial because it could give clear guidelines for manufacturers on what checks to implement, but also encourage them to implement those secure checks. Plus, in addition, the users could then more easily compare the security of hardware security tokens. And lastly, we suggest collaborative protocols. Currently, we have the problem that the single point of trust was shifted from the PC to the hardware token, and we would like to split that by using a mutually verifying algorithm, which you can read more about in our paper. So, summed up, we showed that used authenticity checks are not sufficient to defeat distribution attacks. The measures are not transparent for users, and blind trust in the manufacturer is often required. And we suggest to use transparent authenticity checks, make the checks which are implemented visible to users, and manual checks easily accessible, and also use security labels to make the security comparable. In doing so, we enable the user to judge token authenticity based on meaningful information. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and now I am happy to take questions.